I'm Mia Rio, and this is my album, Worship. The Worship album, I wrote that during the pandemic with COVID, when everything was very uncertain, lockdowns were going on, people were facing their own demons and just really forced to just handle their own realities. And I took that time to really just come closer to God, do some introspection, figure out what I needed to learn, to grow. I mean, I had all the time in the world. I was spending literally 6-8 hours a day, singing, worshiping, reading the Bible, watching sermons, and trying to understand, God's heart, God's mind. It kind of reconnected me to that first love, when I first came to Christ. And sometimes we get into that routine of our day-to-day with God. Everything gets too trivialized because we get used to, God's love. And it was really great to be able to go back to that appreciation level of when I first began in my faith. And that just brought the inspiration to start writing songs that celebrate God and that celebrate everything that I believe in about God and that have been tried and true in my life. Because of the pandemic being a time where everybody was losing their jobs, not knowing what was going to happen, I asked the Holy Spirit, I just asked God, how can I do this with excellence without breaking bank, not knowing what's ahead? Give me a smart strategy. So then this idea just popped up, and I remembered somebody that I knew from my home country, Brazil, who used to have, a music career back home and knew all of these fantastic engineers and producers. And I reached out to him and said, hey, can I get in touch with your guys? He introduced me to Misa Jr., the producer. Then he started introducing me to different options for, who could be my team. Now, originally, I was going to produce the album with someone else, and this person disappeared from the map. I thought I was doing something wrong. And when the song Yeshua Master was done, which was the first song I did for the album, but I released it as a single a year before, this original producer reached out to me out of the blue, and I'm like, oh, he's resurrected from the dead. And he tells me that he was randomly in the kitchen trying to overcome his depression, and he heard this random song on Spotify in English, and he just broke down crying. And he went to see what the song was, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's Yeshua Master. It's the song from Mia that I was supposed to produce. But God knew that the time wasn't right for his involvement. So I ended up working with Misa, or Misa, like we would say here in America. And I started getting in touch with, Dan Mazzadri, which is the mixing engineer on the project, Luciano Vasson, which is also a mastering engineer who has won Grammys in Brazil. And I also realized how much easier it would be for me financially to do this in a country where the currency exchange would favor me. So I decided let's do it. It sounded amazing when we tested out the waters and see if we were going to click with the production. He was taking my directions really well, and he was adding to it in an amazing way too. So I said, Misa, let's get this done. You are the one to do this project. Every song that I wrote at home. There were bits and pieces that I would get maybe when I'm walking around and I'm like, oh, and then I get my phone. I used to write everything on paper, but and because I came from a poetry background. But once I shifted to songwriting and we got into technology, I started writing stuff either on my phone or my laptop. And I usually have my bright ideas in the shower. And then I just take my time to complete the concept. Some songs are done quickly. In an hour, I'm done. Other songs would take, a couple of days. Sometimes I will revisit in a week and hear it with fresh ears. And I'm like, yeah, that actually doesn't sound good. And figure out, with the help of the Holy Spirit, I always ask him to give me inspiration and to give me skills to write something that will be important for that time and for the ears that need to hear. So I started with Yeshua Master as my first song, and Your Love Is Enough was the last song that I wrote, which I decided to do just piano and strings. It was supposed to be a full-blown, instrumental. It was supposed to be a lot faster paced. But once I saw the piano, I felt the intimacy of the song and the intimacy of the message, and it just made complete sense. That's exactly how we wanted to do it, so we just did it that way. The album was a collaboration between people in Brazil, in different cities in Brazil. My vocal arranger and backing vocal, she's in France. She's from LA, but she's moved to France, and she's doing an amazing job there for us. Dan is in the south of Brazil. Maisa is in the south of Brazil. Luciano was in São Paulo, but now he's in Orlando, Florida. And I recorded my vocals in Atlanta, Georgia. So a lot of files moving around. It took us about a year because all of the musicians, every song was played with real instruments. And a lot of the musicians were touring musicians in Brazil, and they were on big tours with big artists, so they would be able to record it whenever they had free time. So sometimes, a file that used to take 48 hours to be given to us was taking 15 days, just because of their lack of time. So that stretched out the completion time of the project. But once it was done, we were so excited, and I'm very proud of our work. I'm very, very proud of how we did it. And honestly, just how people are responding to it and the stories I hear from the people who are listening to it, that enough is magical to me. That's what it's all about, to celebrate God and to impact people through that celebration. I can't wait for you to hear the album Worship. It's available on all digital platforms, and I hope we get to know each other a little better. So follow me on social media, subscribe, and let's continue to talk. And I pray and hope that my music will continue to touch you in a way that would help change your life in some way or another. God bless you.